the Geek Church, the internet's original Bible study show. I'm your host, Jared Elrod, and I'm rocking today one of two recent Dragon Ball Z shirts my wonderful wife has bought for me. This woman will just find Dragon Ball Z shirts and buy them for me, and keeps track of all the new anime stuff that my daughter enjoys, and will buy them for her. We're gonna jump into today's episode, but I just realized I have like a paranoia about the microphone, and I can't see. So like on this one, I can see it flashing. That one isn't turned, so I gotta turn that really quick, and then we can jump into the episode. Okay, that's fixed. I'm a little paranoid about it because I had the batteries die on me partway through a first play video review of what's it called? I can't think of it. The Quarry. And it's really annoying because I recorded it, and then I recorded a Geek Church with it, and then I was supposed to release them like a month ago at this point, basically. And I realized that, the microphone died on me partway through, like towards the end. I'm gonna have to re-record it, and it's so hard to re-record things, at least for me. Like, I just like throw all my energy into it, and then it's time to re-record, and I'm like, eh. So I haven't done it yet, which means the actual core Geek Church episode is also just keeps getting pushed back every week. So, all right, what we're gonna get into today, I'm gonna do something a little bit different today. Partly just to be honest, like I have a very busy week, and I don't have like a super long. I've gotten behind on recording. I've been really busy. Like we have new youth pastors, and so we've had lots of youth events. We've been doing things, and I've just been tired. I have been pushing my running. I've been running, so it's not something I've really talked about in this episode. Before I talk about too much though, like I keep seeing this thing, let's christen this episode. Oh yeah, there we go. Good stuff. So, I've been running a lot. And it kind of started just as like a fitness thing, but then it turned into like a mental challenge thing. Kind of going like wanting to go Super Saiyan. And then at some point, the switch flipped, and now people are just saying I have a mental illness because they don't understand with my running. And I won't go into it too much, but like I've always struggled to run. It's like a thing. Like I'm not a runner. I was a swimmer in high school, and even when I started, I'm saying and a lot and long protracted ands. So, even when I started running, I started taking my fitness stuff. I've talked about this a little bit serious. I might actually do a whole episode on it where I find like things as examples or something and do it. I don't know. We'll see. But see, now I'm using everything but all these things. So I was about to say so. I started getting into it seriously, and I couldn't really run. And over the last year or so, I've been running, and I was doing like kind of like high intensity where I'd run for, I can't remember if it was, I think I was running for like 45 seconds. It could have been as low as 20 seconds. So I can't remember. I think it was like 45 seconds running, and then basically one lap around the track would take me 4 different rests. So I'd run, and I would stop, and I'd have a rest period, and I'd run. And I got to the point where I wasn't even using my timer anymore because I pretty much knew where I needed to run and where I needed to rest. And it would take me 4 rest periods to get all the way around. That's a quarter of a mile, people. It wasn't actually, that's not even true. It's not even a quarter of a mile because I was running on the inside track, which, from what I can tell, because I now use the Map My Run app, the inside track is actually slightly less than a mile, and the outside track is slightly more than a mile. So the actual sweet spot for a mile is somewhere in the middle. Like I'm guessing like probably lane 3 or 4 out of the 6. So I was running the inside mile. So I wasn't even doing a full mile. I was probably doing like 0.93 of a mile, 0.91 of a mile, something like that. And it would take me 4 rests to do it. I would get shin splints, and then I couldn't run for 2 or 3 days. It was super hard. Yeah, all that said, lost a bunch of weight. I was running at the gym. A few months ago, I saw something about a guy. Well, I don't know why I'm talking about all this, but it's my show, so I can. And well, hopefully I'll encourage you. He talked about like for 30 days he ran a 5K every morning at the gym for 30 days. And I'm like, oh, how much is a 5K? I'm an American. I don't know what that means. So I looked up, I'm like, oh, it was just under, it was basically 3.2 miles, I rounding up. I'm like, oh, I want to try that. So I started doing that at the gym, and I did that for several months, but I wasn't running continually. So I would start walking. I'd walk up, anywhere from a quarter mile to a full mile to warm up. And then I'd run. I'd go up to 5 miles an hour, and I'd run. And then I would get tired, and so I'd run that like a quarter of a mile, and I'd go back down. And I worked my way up half a mile, and then I got to where like I did a full mile one time, and then I did 2 miles at one point, and I really pushed myself. And then it dawned on me because I did the 2 miles, and I was like, it wasn't really that hard. And it dawned on me that this is more of a mental thing. This isn't really like a physical barrier. It was when I first started, but at this point now, I'd gone for like 6-7 months of working out and losing a bunch of weight and working on stuff. I was like, this is a mental thing. I just tell myself I can't run. So then I went to the track, and I was like, so I ended up doing like 2 miles, and then I just kept doing that, and then I just got to the point where I really got insane. One day I did like 3 miles. Hold on, I got a notification, and my daughter is a message from my wife. She's at camp with kids camp, and she forgot some stuff, so I'm gonna have to take her some stuff. Anyways, all that said, I don't know what I'm saying, to be honest. But anyways, I'm now up to, I did last week, so I did 3, you guys don't care about this. The punchline is I ran 10 miles today, and I'm tired. And so I'm going to do a little bit shorter of an episode. You're like, oh my gosh, Jared, that was the longest intro. But hey, that's what's great about these like podcasts and shows is you get to know me a little bit. And I am going to do probably a whole fitness episode. I will incorporate it into like some of the geek stuff and whatnot. But so episode 45. We've made it to 45. So this is putting me, well, not quite 10 episodes since we've come back. But we're working on it. We're getting there. We're getting close to episode 50. What am I going to do for episode 50? But today what I'm going to do, instead of picking 3 different animes, just because I don't have the bandwidth to do that, because I still have 2 more episodes I want to record after this, because today is really my only day that I'm going to be able to really do recording this week. So I'm going to take advantage of it. I already told my daughter, who is watching my son, because my middle son is with my wife at camp. My eldest daughter is watching my youngest son. And so I already told her I already have that squared away, that they're on their own tonight. I'll be home 9-10 o'clock or whatever. And she's like, yeah, okay, cool. They got it all, dinner and everything all planned. I don't want to do that another night and say, I need Tuesday night. So I want to really spend this time. My son wants to do some hydro dipping because he is obsessed with YouTube, and he wants to hydro dip. And my wife finally got him the spray paint, and I just need to take him to the dollar store, buy him some items to actually hydro dip. And I promised I'm going to do that this week, and then I'm supposed to take him to a movie and play some video games with him, and then my daughter and I are actually going to record. This will be really cool. You'll be seeing come up, even though this is a Hunter x Hunter episode, you're going to be seeing a lot of Hunter x Hunter content, because we're going to watch a bunch of Hunter x Hunter, and after each episode we'll record a quick episode. So next Tuesday's episode is probably going to be more Hunter x Hunter, but I will have my daughter. We won't be here. We'll be at my house, in my living room, and we're just going to watch an episode. So I think it'll be episode 3, and we'll talk about it, and then we'll watch another episode. We'll do that for however many we can do. We'll do it for 3 episodes, actually, is what we'll do, because that's what I need. But for today, I'm going to just be going over episode 2 of Hunter x Hunter Season 1, and I'm going to be talking about the 3 tests, or the 3 challenges they went through. So yeah, let's jump into that. I'm going to also tell you, there's going to be a little less scripture in this episode. It's going to be a little more talking and some stories and some examples and referencing scripture. Because I said so. So here we go. Hunter x Hunter Season 1, Episode 2, Test 1. So they get off the boat. Gon gets guidance from the captain that goes against really what everyone else is doing and everyone knows to do, right? And even their written instructions. So the captain really likes him. He's been really kind to the captain. They are like kindred spirits. And he's like, hey, let me give you some advice. He's like, look, you see up there? You see that big tree up there? Head straight for that. And they have a paper that says go to, and I can't remember the name of some city, which is, so if you look at a map, so then they are, right? He tells his 2 buddies, Leorel and, hold on, I have it written down. Kurapika. And so I guess I am watching so many animes right now, and I have to learn like 5 at least new names for like every single anime. So cut me some slack that I'm struggling with remembering all the names because it's a lot, okay? It's a lot of names. It's not one per show. I've got like 5 or 6 shows I'm going through for Geek Church, and each of them have a ton of names, and they're not like even like names that are normal to me. I didn't say normal to me as a Westerner, so I'm having to learn all of them. And my daughter I keep slipping into wrong pronunciations of things like, what was I calling? It was in Demon Slayer episode 39. I was mispronouncing his name the entire time, and I still sometimes slip back and say manga instead of manga, which is probably always going to happen. I'll be doing this show probably for 50 years, and I'll still every now and then say manga. So test 1, they're looking at the map and they're like, oh, well, that cedar you're saying is like over here, but the city we're supposed to go is over here. And then Gon's kind of like, peace out, I'm going, because this is what I was told to do, I'm going to go this way. I trust him. And then Leoriel was basically like, I'm going, you guys are crazy, I'm going the normal way, I'm getting on the bus. And he overhears some people saying like, yeah, the buses never make it. So he's like, all right, let me go with them. So this first one, right? And it just made me think of this idea of, like, I'm not even going to say hearing that, sister. I'm not going to, like, all forms of, like, hearing from God, right? And getting direction from God. Whether it be, like, you know, the Holy Spirit just, like, dropping it in your spirit, whether you are reading something, whatever it may be, just any form of hearing from God and getting guidance from God. And it goes against kind of what is normal, or what is everyone else is doing, right? So I've got a couple stories. The first one is from Kenneth E. Hagin. I'm almost positive that's where I heard this from. But it's during a period of time when I was listening to a ton of audiobooks, or books through Speechify. I got a bunch of free PDFs, downloaded them, was listening to them through Speechify, and this is last summer, so I was all day. I was mowing lawns, barbecuing, playing video games, everything I was doing I was listening, and I was listening to multiple books a day sometimes. So I'm almost positive this was from Kenneth Hagin, but just in case it could have been someone else. And he's telling a story, and there was a lot of details to it, so I'm really simplifying it, but the short version is there was a guy who basically felt like he was not supposed to go into work. He had a dream that he climbed up a ladder and was decapitated. There was other stuff too, where pastors, like, they kept getting woken up, they prayed for hours. There's more details, right? So a lot goes into this, but basically the punchline is, so he calls in sick and he's like, I'm not coming in today. I'm a little upset, a little disturbed. I had this dream where I climbed the ladder, I was decapitated. I'm taking a day off, basically. So the foreman then goes over to another group and was like, hey, so I need one of you to go up this, climb up this ladder and do this thing. It was supposed to be, let's just call him John. John was supposed to do it, but he called in because he had a dream that he died going up the ladder, and didn't think he should do it. So the other guy, he goes up and he starts going up the ladder. He climbs like halfway up and he stops and he comes back down and he goes, no, I don't think I will. Like, I'm a Christian and I just don't feel right in my spirit about it. I'm just not going to do it. And then another guy goes, well, I'm a Christian and I'm not superstitious. Like, what's wrong with you guys? He climbs up the ladder, a cord, like not a cord, like the metal, like those metal beams, not beams, wire, like the metal wire. Why can't I think of the name of it? Anyways, it snaps and it takes the guy's head off. Guy's body falls, his head falls. Not good. Right? There was another story. So this basically all was like, oh, this guy, why was it that there were these 3 Christians, right? One of them had to basically, so one of them heard it in a dream. One of them just didn't feel right in his spirit last minute. And one of them was completely ignorant to the danger and was not able to heed the direction of the Lord at all, right? And that's kind of makes me think of with this Gon episode. In fact, I just heard, I won't say his name or anything, I'm sure it's fine, but I won't say name anyways. But I have a buddy who used to be in the military, not Chris, and he was in the Army, and they were driving, and they were in Iraq. I just assume that I always assume it's Iraq. They were driving, and they were driving down like basically the wrong side of the road for whatever reason on purpose, and they got like the call. So he's in the passenger seat, and there's a buddy is driving, and they get basically the order to, okay, go up and like in 2 blocks, you're gonna go through the intersection and get back over into like the right lane of traffic that you're supposed to be in. Oh, okay. Well, he said, I got so like sick to my stomach. Like I just felt like that was wrong. Like we shouldn't do that. Like to the point where I was nauseous, like sick to my stomach. So I told him, I said, hey, just disregard that order. And the guy's like, what? That was an order. He's like, just don't do it. Don't do it. And he's like, got him in his ear screaming at him, like, because he's disobeying an order. And they have like a helicopter apparently above, and they're kind of like watching like surveillance this whole thing. So they don't do it, and he's being yelled at in the ear. He's like, listen to the order. You gotta get back, blah blah blah. He's like, just don't do it. He's like, are you sure about this, man? Like, he's like, don't do it. Don't do it. Okay, fine. So they keep driving down the wrong side of the road, or what they were doing before. They don't course correct. So then they get past a little ways, and then they get a call from the aerial view, basically saying, hey, good call, not getting back over. There was a pretty large IED that most likely would have blown you guys sky high. And he was like, oh, he's like, I'm so glad, So in that sense, he would have been, at the time, probably not quite as advanced as a Christian as, so, like maybe in the one, I don't know, whatever. Like he's basically hearing from God, where he's, he didn't get a dream the night before. He just felt in his spirit like this is not okay. And we have to be careful, because we can get weird with this, where we can be like, oh, I don't know, should I turn left, should I turn right? Oh, Holy Spirit, tell me, what do I like? Oh, I had a bad feeling, right? So we gotta be careful, because we can really run down a rabbit trail here. But the idea that we're guided as Christians, we're guided by the Lord, and so in this sense, they're hunters, and it's like, hey, can you figure this out? For us, it's this idea of like, we're being guided by the Lord, and sometimes it's the Holy Spirit just to our spirit. Sometimes it could be like there's we have Saul. My scripture I would have had, but I didn't want to pull them up. I just want to be casual in this episode. Was when Ananias is told by, well, first off, Paul gets audible what to do, and then Ananias is like, hey, Paul, he's going to come, you're going to do the blah, 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 this is what you're going to do. Paul, go to Straight Street. So it could be that. It could be a matter of another Christian calling and be like, hey, I just feel like God really, you gotta be careful of that too, because you want to make sure you're not living your life off of the word from God that someone else says. Or a lot of times in Christians, I feel like, at least coming from, like a bajillion years of youth ministry, I feel like Christians really underestimate the power of the word. And my Bible's right there. I can't quite reach it. It's when I should pick it up and like hold it. It's like, I just left it right off frame, out of my reach. But the power of the word, and I've told the story before about my dad and getting direction of how to get the saw. I don't know if I told it on the show. I'm not going to go into time. Maybe I'll tell it some other time. But being able to get the sawmill out of his truck when he had no way to get out of his truck because he took a break and went and prayed and then was reading his Bible and got the answer, like as practical as just unloading something from his truck, right? How crazy is that? So as Christians, we are to be led by the Spirit, we're to be led, but a lot of times it's not something fancy. We always want some fancy, a word from the Lord, or I remember at one point I'd gotten a letter and I was like, I won't go into details because it makes me sound really juvenile, because I was, but it was like, if it's option A, I'll go with 1 and 2, right? Because that's our next one in here. If it's option 1, let this letter say something about a cheeseburger, but if it's option 2, this is so stupid, but I promise I did this in college. But if it's option 2 I should be taking, let the letter talk about pizza, and it didn't talk about food at all, and I was really confused. And I was like, but God, it was supposed to. God's like, shut up, man. You're more mature than this. You got other ways to hear from me. I'm like, oh, okay, all right. So yes, that was what we get from challenge 1. Let's move to challenge 2. Okay, so their second challenge is they're walking through the city and they're getting pretty close to getting, they're on their way to the tree. And it's weird, it's like, they're like, oh, the town's abandoned. And Gone's like, no, there's lots of people here. It's very interesting how intuitive Gone is, and Leoriel, I even saying that right now? Isn't. In fact, he's totally being carried. Like, he does have some value on his own, but like as of right now, he's totally being carried by his teammates. And then like this weird little carnival platform thing like comes out, and it's like, oh, time for the game of the challenge trivia question, and they're like, oh, okay. And so it's basically like, okay, you have to answer with either 1 or 2. I'm going to give you a question. You have to answer with, all you can say is 1 or 2. They're the only 2 verbal responses you can give me. Anything else, you'll be disqualified. You can't go on. You can't be in the thing, right? So this guy had been following them because he heard that piece of advice in the beginning. So they let him go first. And he's like, haha, I'm going to go first and I'm going to set traps. I'm like, what? Why? What is wrong with them getting into the exam? It's not like only, well, I don't know, maybe only a certain amount of people can. But I'm like, why would you just feel the need to like set traps? Like, that's just gonna, anyways. So she asks, and she's like, hey, so you basically, it's the whole, oh, what's the name of it? The train exercise, the thing, right? Well, it's not exactly that, because that's more about, it's a little different. But it's a morality question where it's like, okay, so you can basically save your lover or your mother. Hey, those rhyme. That's probably why they said lover. That's a bit of a weird word for a kid's show, but it's probably why. Lover or mother. Oh, I just got it. So, and he's basically, oh, it's easy. It's 1. It's whichever one was the mother. He picked the mother. And he only did it because it was an older lady, like a grandmother. He's like, that's the answer she's going to want. He's like, oh. She goes, oh, really? What's your reasoning? He's like, oh, it's because you can always find a new lover, but you can't get another mother. And he basically then tells them like, oh, it's just all you have to do is say the answer that she wants to hear. And she's like an old lady. She's going to want to hear the mother, the loyalty, blah, blah, blah. So she's like, oh, okay, you can pass. So he passes. And then now it's their turn. And she goes, okay, you basically same thing, except for it's, you have a son and a daughter. You can only save one of them. Which do you do? And they start to talk, but she realizes that Karapika figured it out. So she's like, anything you say will disqualify you. All you can say is 1 or 2, or your only appropriate response is anything else you say will disqualify you. And so they don't say anything because they can't figure it out. Right? Karapika knew, and Gon knew. He didn't. He didn't say anything, but then he did try to attack her. Oh, let's attack an old lady. Like, this guy, I don't know. Like, he annoys me sometimes, but I'm sure he'll, redeem himself. Well, and I already I'm on episode 11 personally, and he's not gotten much better at this point. So basically they got it because the only answer, or silence was the only appropriate response, and she didn't say you had to say 1. She said your only 2 responses could be 1 or 2. Okay, 1 is the daughter, 2 is the son. And so they said, well, then the answer is no response because there's no right answer, and that was the right answer. And what I have for that, what it kind of made me think of is this idea of like just refusing to participate in evil. So the world will a lot of times will give you 2 choices and say, here's an evil choice and here's an evil choice. Pick one, right? And we're kind of going through a version of this with the whole Roe versus Wade thing right now, where they're trying to say, well, if we can't have option A, then you got to do option B, and they're coming up with all these crazy things of what option B could be. When a lot of times, or when the world presents you with 2 evil choices, even if one's the lesser of evil, the option is always to not participate, right? So trying to think of an example, I have a biblical example here, is Abraham and Sarah, when they when they take it into their own hands to have a promise to have a descendant, right, an heir, and Sarah's like, hey, go sleep with my handmaid, and Ishmael is born. Okay, so they basically say, okay, we have 2 options, worldly options. One is we don't do anything, we don't have another kid, and then God's promises are just not fulfilled. We have to help God out. So the option 2, which is still inappropriate, is okay, you're going to go sleep with one of my handmaids, you're going to go sleep with another woman, when God said it was going to be me and you. But we're gonna, it's not the best, but this other way it's not happening. It's our only good option. When the correct answer was to do nothing and just trust in God, which is technically doing something. So I guess that's not, it's literally physically doing nothing. Versus hey, yeah, let me go cheat on my wife. She said it's okay, we're going to go and we're going to help God out. And I feel like a lot of times we get stuck in this like morality trap of, do I choose the one or do I choose the other? And a lot of times we feel like we want to do something good for God, and we're afraid that it's like not going to happen, so we end up choosing a poor option, and we end up compromising our own integrity to try to like, and I've been really into like, this has been on my mind a lot lately with seeing so many like mega churches and mega church pastors, it's just pastors in general, like stuff at the SBC. And it's this idea like when a church gets so big that it can't fail, that the staff then has to compromise their own integrity to make sure the church doesn't fail. And that's not the example Jesus gave, where Jesus was like, hey, drink my blood, eat my flesh. Oh, everyone's leaving. Okay, right? Because it's like, hey, this is, and he would kind of thin the herd, really, there, thin the crowd. But instead, like, we build up these churches, like, oh, God gives us a vision to plant a church. Oh, it's been going, 25 years, 30 years, 35 years. And then what ends up happening is, again, it's this big machine that is just too big to let fail. So when things happen, when there are allocations of, which is what's really happening a lot right now, is there's all this sexual abuse coming out, or just abuse in general, and it's been covered up for years because, like, well, we can't let that come out because it's going to destroy the church, and the church must go on. And it's like, okay, little c, no. Big C, yes, but you're not going to mess up the big C. That's God's kind of project, right? Little c, yeah, like, it would have been much better when you were 15 years ago to have dealt with this stuff. Would there have been scandal? Would there have maybe been lawsuits? Would there have been news articles and things written? And could it have hurt the reputation of the church? Yeah, probably. But would it have been as bad? No. Like, you should have dealt with it. Yes, maybe you would have had a church split. You would have lost half the people. You would have any number of things, right? Maybe had to lay off some staff. But instead, when you have to compromise, it's basically what you're doing is when you have to choose one of these options, you're choosing to compromise. You're choosing which sin or which world, like, evil should we do, right? And it's the lesser of two evils. But as Christians, that's not what we're supposed to do. And there's many a times we see examples in the Bible where they're faced with two wicked options or bad options, so they choose neither, and sometimes it costs them their life. Nowadays, it's more common. It's going to cost you a grade. It's going to cost you it's going to cost you a promotion, maybe even cost you your job, probably cost you a relationship. It's probably not in America going to cost you your life, but it's possible. But that's the example that we see, right? Is like, okay, we can't take either wrong option. So silence is the only option in this, or non-participation. Hey, pick one of these. I'm not going to participate. Well, why not? Well, because of my convictions and my beliefs. Well, that means that this is what's going to happen. That's okay. The Bible doesn't say thou shalt not be fired from your job. The Bible doesn't say, in fact, it says to even rejoice. And James talks about to rejoice when you're being persecuted for your beliefs. So if you fire me all the way up to killing me, I mean, technically that just makes me a martyr. I don't want that, but you kill me, like, I'm now like instant reward in heaven. I'm not going to, and you can persecute me all you want, and I'm just going to rejoice in the fact that I'm being persecuted for my beliefs and for righteousness' sake. I'm not going to compromise. It's going to tick people off. People won't like it, but it's essentially what we should be doing as Christians, is choosing not to participate in either evil choice. And yeah, sometimes that means dealing with the consequences, aka could be persecution. All right, let's move on to test 3. Okay, so test 3, it kind of seems like the entire test was based off the scripture of 2 Timothy 2:15, where it talks about study to show thyself approved. So yeah, let's talk about how each of them did. Basically, we've got a situation. They're put in a difficult situation. I guess that technically works, but it's just weird. You may say impossible situations to see how they do. And it's basically, they come into this place, they're supposed to find these 2 guides who are going to help them get to the mountain, and the guides are being attacked. The husband has been gorged, essentially, by the claws of this monster, this shape-shifting monster, and I guess shape-shifting is not accurate. It's more accurate to say that it it can turn into humans. I guess that's shape-shifting, yeah. And then he's got the wife, and then it takes off with the wife, and the guy's like, no, don't help me, help the wife. And so there's like all these different ways that like they could pass, and it's essentially to show, hey, you have some sort of skill. This whole thing is set up like no one's gonna get these all right. It's not that like there's no perfect situation or scenario. It's just there's like a dozen ways for you to do something to show merit, to show that you are prepared, you're worthy of being able to take this test. So let's go through each of them and see how they passed. So we have Krapika, right? His was his knowledge. And it's still weird to me that Krapika is a guy. I really thought it was a girl who was pretending to be a guy to get in, and my daughter is like, no, I've seen a ton of episodes, like he's a guy. Okay, whatever, Krapika's a guy. His is knowledge. So he sees the wife's like tattoo, which basically is a tattoo in that area that only women who take a vow of chastity, meaning like I'm never going to be with a man. So clearly you wouldn't have that tattoo and be married. So he immediately knew something's up here. And so he passed because knowledge. Hey, you knew that, you're able to figure that out. Hunters need to know things. They need to know about the local stuff in the area. They need to be able to figure things out. So he got his for knowledge, right? Being able to identify a trap, essentially, fake trap, but a trap, off of his knowledge of things. And so he was able to get through. Leorel, which honestly, I'm shocked he passed. But he had compassion and the ability to act on it. And I think that's so important because most people, not in this world, people suck in this world, but most people in the real world, if someone was hurt and injured, so they're like, oh, hey, you stay here and you help the husband, we're going to go after and try to get the wife. Most people would have compassion on someone who was just essentially stabbed. You got, gored with a claw, but let's just say stabbed, right? You came across a couple and let's say this situation's in real life and you're walking down the street and a couple's being attacked, and the husband had been stabbed, and they grab the woman and throw her in a car and drive off. Well, we don't have superpowers, we don't have whatever, so we're not hunters, so clearly you're not going to be able to trace down the van. So at that point, you would at least then want to, okay, maybe call 911, maybe report, maybe try to get a picture of the car, the license plate, something like that if you're really on it. But at the very least, you'd want to help the husband, but most people wouldn't have the ability. All they'd be able to do is call 911 and probably didn't even get any descriptions of the van or the car, and then they just call, they're like, I don't even know where I am, let me look, let me walk down the street, right? By the time, he's probably gonna bleed out. So he had compassion, they said like he kept asking if I was okay, trying to really say, hey, don't stress, they're gonna get your wife back. So he had the compassion for the person, but he also had the ability, they said he was able to bandage him and take care of him quicker than even a doctor would be able to. So he had compassion plus the ability to back it up. And I feel as Christians, a lot of times we have the quote-unquote compassion, but not with the ability to back it up. And it makes me think this is a story of a guy I knew who, he would tell me that he like wanted to buy me a house and wanted to pay off my car but then like wanted me to then treat him differently because of his desire. Like he wanted me to almost act like his desire to do those things should be almost as good as doing them, and therefore like I should credit his friendship account with the fact of that I'm like, fool, I want to do that too. Like I want to go around and be able to just pay off stuff. Like I want to go pay off my parents' mortgage and my wife's parents' mortgage and buy my mom a new car and be able to go down and like see homeless people and go get them. Like I want to go buy a huge like apartment complex and be able to let homeless people come in and have a program set up where they rehabilitate them and get them jobs and be able to go out and feed people and all these different, I want to do that too, but I'm not doing it. Therefore, like most people would want to, like most people, if they could snap their finger and end world hunger, they would, but then other people actually go out and spend their life doing it, right? Like Tony Robbins gives away like so many turkeys, so much food and Thanksgiving dinners during Thanksgiving. A lot of people go way out of their way to do things. My grandma does like hundreds of shoebox operation, at shoebox operation, I don't know, whatever it is, but where they fill the shoeboxes, they send them the kids for Christmas. She doesn't just have a desire. Like I have a desire for these kids to have a good Christmas, but my grandma like sends out like 400 plus boxes essentially by herself. Her husband and like her daughter and grandkids, it's like an assembly line. They do this whole thing. Their whole house turns into a little factory, and they do like 400 plus boxes. Oh, just to put it into perspective, our church does between like 250 and 350 boxes a year as a church of like 300 people. She has one person, okay fine, 3 people essentially do more than that. Our old church did like 250 boxes, so she's doing like double our old church and still like 100 boxes more than our current entire church, everyone working together, right? There's a desire, plus there's compassion, plus the ability to do it. So yeah, like he gets the pass, not just because if he was just there like, oh, I don't really know what to do, I'm sorry you're bleeding out, but don't worry, we'll get your wife back, and you're probably going to die because I have no ability to help you, but we're going to do our best to get the wife, right? That wouldn't have been as useful. And so he had studied to show himself approved by literally having the skills to, very good skills to help with that medical situation. And then Gone, bro just has natural ability for one, right? He's able to like, they're shocked that he's able to hit as hard and keep up and all kind of stuff. But then the other thing too, on top of his natural ability is his perspective. He was the only one of the 3 who could tell them apart. Like, you're not the same. Like, and it was like that whole like, oh, they all look the same to me, right? It's kind of like that whole joke thing where like every race seems to think other races all look alike, and it's kind of like a joke like, bro, we don't all look the same, you know. And so I know that's with the black community, with the Asian community. I've even seen the other way around with the white community, right, where people are like, well, I don't know, you all look the same to me. Like, that's an ongoing kind of thing. And it's like a mild version, I guess, of racism. Maybe not quite racist, but like that whole idea of like, oh, you all look the same. Like, you've just never developed the ability to perceive the differences, right? And it makes me think of one church we're at where there were twins. These 2 boys were twins, and the senior pastor could never, we weren't here long, we had a lot of problems here, could never tell them apart. And everyone else could. Now, when we got there, we couldn't either. But after we'd been there for like 6 weeks or so, maybe even less, we got to where we could tell them apart, even from a pretty good distance. If we could see one of them, like from afar off, and probably 9 out of 10 times guess which brother it was, because we knew them. We knew the difference between them, and we could see the difference and tell the difference, because we had that relationship with them, and we began to see the small differences that we couldn't. And so to me, it was always like, I was always embarrassed for the pastor, because it was like, it showed me his heart that he really never cared about individual people. He was always more into like the overall growth of the church and the health of the church and the finances of the church. And he like loved people in a general sense of like, loved like the church being successful. And it was always like really embarrassing and a glaring kind of like a tell. Like the fact that he'd been there for years and he couldn't tell the twins apart. Everyone else could but him, and we'd only been there, you know, in a very short period of time. We were able to tell them apart, even, like I said, when not even comparing them, but like when it was one of them from a really far distance. I can only think of one time when we, like, after we knew them, that ever even got it wrong. And once and it was because of they threw us off because of a certain situation. Their dress was kind of switched. The one brother was dressed a little bit more like the other one, but once he got closer, we were able to see the difference in the face. And be like, no, it's not, right? And so it makes me think of that. And so Gone's able to see, like, hey, you're not the same, your voice is a little bit different. And the other 2, like, you look a little different, and they're like, we don't really see the difference. So his natural ability, but he also passed just because his ability to see that and to perceive that. And that's something that would normally come with, like, life experience. And someone older, and the fact that he was able to really shows his heart, right? And it really shows his heart to really see things as they are and accept things that he's almost like devoid of all prejudice. And I don't mean prejudice in a bad, like, racist, the other 2 are racist, they all look the same, but in the fact of like, he has no preconceived, he just sees people as individuals and accepts them for, not accepts as in like, oh, whatever, I think, you know, I'm rambling a little bit, but is able to see each and every person as a unique individual as they are. And so he ends up passing for that. And my main thing with that is, again, the study to show yourself approved, to where it's essentially they're being asked that, hey, let's put them in this impossible situation and basically make them with their actions answer the question, why should we let you go on? Why are you worthy to go on to the next stage to be able to take the test? And they each had to basically say, well, because we've studied to show ourselves approved. Oh, really? Show us. And each one of them had to. So, yeah. That's it. I got a few minutes. I did order some food, so it is not on the way yet. So I just want to wrap this episode up and say I hope you enjoyed this. I know it's a little bit of a shorter, at least it's the same format, a little bit of a short episode. I've had a couple short episodes. That's just going to happen. As I get busier, my goal is to start doing these and be out ahead. So like even if I get busy, it doesn't really slow it down because I've got 2 or 3 or even a month ahead. But that also limits me on like how I can react to things quickly, like going and seeing the light year. Something happens and I want to do a quick response to it. It does limit me a little bit with that, but I think I need some sort of hybrid approach. So yeah, I believe Thursday's episode, it's either going to be 3 different comics I'm going to be reviewing and talking about, or no, it's not actually, because I realize I don't have the comics here with me and I want to have them for that. So next week's is actually going to be Lightyear Part 2, where I go in and I actually use all my notes I had and we don't just review it and talk about it a little bit, where I really dive in a little bit. So yeah, next week or on Thursday, so in a couple days, it's going to be Lightyear Part 2. Definitely check that out. Unless you're just like, I'm only here for the anime, then I will see you next week, where it's going to be 3 more episodes of Hunter x Hunter, but joined by the very special guest of my daughter. I'll see you then. And remember, always be leveling up your faith.